You're listening to The Collected Podcast, bringing you stories that remind us who God is and who we are in Him. The Collected Podcast is a production of Collected Ministries, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping disciples of Jesus discover and live from their true identity in Christ, recognize and walk in their divine purpose within the kingdom of God, and experience growth in their capacity for mature, healthy relationships. Follow Collected on social media at Collected Ministries, and be sure to visit thecollectedpodcast.com for show notes and additional content related to today's episode.
Welcome to Season 4, Episode 10 of the Collected Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Biondo, and this week I am so excited to bring you a conversation with my friend Amanda McMullen. She and I met a few years ago through the hand lettering world. We were both kind of starting out little small businesses, and we came to know each other through Instagram. And she is so talented. She's a teacher, a singer, an artist, and I wanted to have her share with you about her business and ministry, Asher Marie Company, which she'll tell you about in a little bit. But Amanda, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. I'm so excited to have you on. So to get started today, I was wondering if you could share with our listeners a little bit about how you came to know the Lord and how you ended up doing what you do today.
Yeah, so my faith journey is kind of interesting. So I was raised in a home of professing Christian parents, but we never went to church. And so I always had this longing and desire to know the truth and to know Jesus. And honestly, the biggest motivation in my life when I was younger was to be right and good. So it's kind of funny. I was like a little goody two shoes. I always followed the rules, and I desperately wanted to know Jesus because I felt like that was the right thing to do. So I remember when I was 9 years old, I would ask all my friends who went to church, can I go to church with you? I want to go to church. And so I would go with their families, and my parents would take me sometime. My mom would take me occasionally to different ones. But so I would kind of just church hop with my friends. But really it wasn't until college. And that was when I really, really came to know the Lord. And I actually went on a missions trip to Ghana, a short-term missions trip. And it ended up being, it was supposed to be larger, but it ended up being me, this guy, Sam, and then a father and son. So it was the four of us. So of course the father and son hung out a lot. So me and Sam were buddies on that trip. And he was he was maybe in his 40s, and his wife and his children came along with us because they were going to end and they were going to visit their family there. And I think just in coming to know me and wanting to get to know me a little bit more, he sort of was this girl has never had any discipleship. And so he poured into me on that trip, but then not just then, but even when we got back, he and his wife had me over constantly. They prayed for me constantly. He would assign me scripture passages. I didn't know anything about the Bible. He would assign me scripture passages and then call me at 7:00 in the morning on a Saturday. I'm a college student, and ask me if I had read the passages. And he was really a spiritual father to me in my life. And I'm so forever grateful for him because he didn't have to do that. He just saw a need and kind of, said, okay, this girl doesn't really know anything. So I'm going to teach her the way of following Jesus because she obviously wanted to know, So yeah, that's my faith journey. That was when I was about 20 years old. So that's when I got baptized and truly gave my life to Jesus.
I love how God places people specifically in our lives at certain times to draw us to him. And he sees us and he knows what we need. And the way he pursues us, it's so intimate and so specific.
Yeah.
I just love that about him.
Me too.
Yeah. So as you grew from there and continued on your journey, what ways would you say that God has shown up in your life that were different than what you expected?
So, okay. Honestly, I feel from the time I was 20 through now I'm 31, about to turn 32. I feel God, my journey with the Lord was almost, pretty predictable, I guess. There were things that needed to be dealt with and healing and things like that had to happen, and consecutive, but it was always a deeper entering into more joy, more peace, more, all of those great things until I turned 28. So I guess it was about, I guess I was 20. So about 8 years of me really following the Lord and kind of just having it be predictable. Like, wow, this is the Christian life, like more healing, more joy, and all of these things. And then when my husband and I started trying to have a family, we had been married for about 3 years. And we were like, okay, let's start to try to grow our family. And we tried and made it to about a year. And that's like when the dreaded appointment has to be made with the OB saying, okay, why aren't we getting pregnant? What's wrong? And so, my husband and I are both really healthy. We were, relatively young, and I didn't know what was going on. So appointments and after appointment was made. And, over the next year or so, I had so many tests done, found out I had silent stage 4 endometriosis that was causing me to not be able to conceive. And in that moment, like I felt so betrayed by God, not only my body, but God, because I thought, why didn't you warn me about this? Why didn't you tell me that this horrible, stage 4, it was almost like, I'm not even going to go into all the details, but basically it was like toward the end to where like maybe my fertility would not even be able to be preserved at all. Thankfully, with the help of some surgeons, like they were able to remove a lot of it. But even, it's been 2 years since my surgery and I still haven't been able to conceive. So it's pretty bad and pretty severe. And so I had a really, really hard time with that because like I said, up until that point, my relationship with God was all, wonderful and, butterflies and roses. And now all of a sudden I'm like, wait, I had this disease eating away at my body for God knows how many years. And why did you let this happen to me? Like, what if I never am able to have children? That's always been a dream of mine. And so that kind of like made me just kind of go down into this deep, dark valley, like the dark night of the soul. It's been, this month actually marks our, like the end of our 4th year of walking through infertility. So March will be year 5, entering year 5. So it's been quite a long time. But I will say that God, like, okay, so I know you guys like to talk about Enneagram on your podcast, and I'm an Enneagram 7. And I'm very naturally joyful, very optimistic. That's been my whole life. It's like no challenge is too hard. And like, we can always see the bright side. Well, I could not see the bright side of this. It was like a true test. And so, my natural tendency is toward optimism, toward joy. But I guess to answer your question, like, I didn't expect that God would show up in lament and the practice of really diving deep into grief. Because that doesn't come naturally to me. I hate sitting in emotional pain. That's like my biggest fear, and being trapped in that. And when you have a chronic illness or when you have, infertility or something that's just ongoing, it doesn't have like a clear end date. You really are sort of trapped. You have to figure out how to exist in that space. And so, the Lord taught me a lot about lament, and he really met me in that. So I can talk a little bit more about that if you would like.
Yeah, I would love that, especially if you have kind of a word for someone who is nodding along with you, or maybe just feels those tears welling up because that's where they are. And they're, years into this season of waiting, or the chronic illness or the infertility or whatever it is for someone out there, that you are just speaking directly to their soul. Like, what encouragement or hope do you have for them?
So, okay, I read a book. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or if you've maybe even mentioned it on the podcast before, but it's called Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy. Have you heard of that book?
No.
Oh man, it is so good. You got to read it. It's called Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy. It's by a guy named Mark Vrogop. And that book honestly changed my life because he has this quote, and he sort of starts the book by saying that lament is the bridge between a hard life and worship. And that spoke to me so much in my deep emotional pain, because I felt like I could not worship. I would go to church and I'm like, how can I, I honestly was so mad at God, but because of my like tendency to just be joyful all the time. I was like, no, I'm not mad at God, kind of like hiding it, shoving it below the surface. But once I realized like God gives us permission to grieve, and the grief. And I think this is another thing, like my fear was that I was going to be trapped in emotional pain. If I really went into lament, if I really told God how I felt, if I really explained to him how angry and betrayed I was, or I felt by him, then I would just be in the pit forever. I would never get out. But I love that quote and that whole book talks about that, like how lament is a bridge. It's not somewhere where you just get stuck. Like that's bitterness, that's resentment, and you can get stuck there for sure. But I guess what I would say to somebody who is experiencing something really painful over a long period of time is like, don't be afraid to tell God how you feel. Don't be afraid to really cry out and be honest. I mean, like Psalm 13 says, how long, O Lord, will you forget me? Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and every day have sorrow in my heart? And so, I mean, like these words are in the actual Bible, and like you can pour out those feelings to God. And I mean, David is literally saying, how long are you going to hide your face from me? He's telling God, you're hiding your face from me. And obviously God doesn't hide his face from us, but sometimes it really feels like that, And so if David, who was beloved by God, can say, why are you hiding your face from me? Why are you letting me experience suffering all the day long and sorrow in my heart? Then we can certainly cry out to God. And you're not going to get stuck there if your heart is for Jesus. Like if the deepest cry of your heart is to know him more, you're not going to get stuck there. It's going to build a bridge to worship, because I mean, we can't worship in spirit and in truth if we're going to not be truthful about our feelings, and like God can handle those things.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That hits.
That hits, yes.
Yes. Oh man. So as you've walked through this, then, you said the first part of your faith journey with God was the highs and, all this joy and all this good stuff and healing. So how has God deepened your relationship with him and taught you new things about his character through this? Like, what do you love about the character of God now even more?
Yeah. Well, I feel like I have gone through, oh man, if I could just tell you, like, I have gone through such a pit for the past, like, honestly, it's been kind of recent, like within the last couple of months that I've really started to just like dive deep into who God truly is. And I feel like, again, with like lamenting and bringing up the painful feelings that you have of betrayal, like when you speak those things out, when you say those things out loud, it kind of like, it makes you aware of like how untrue some of the things that you're believing are, And so I feel like in confessing the things that I was getting wrong about God, and like, being honest with him about how I felt about the situation, I felt like it forced me to like really confront who he truly is. And that's the thing too about the Psalms of Lament. If you read the Psalms of Lament, and there's like a bunch of them, I think there's like 60 or 70 of them, they always follow a sort of arc where, there's like this crying out to God. There's this complaint of like, what are you doing? Where are you? Why is this happening to me? And then it goes into an ask, God, will you restore me? Will you like take this away from me? Or will you, there's like something that you ask him for. And then there's always at the end of it, a declaration of who he is. And so I feel like that, even that journey of like going down into that has made me like reaffirm, because at the end of that, like after you pour out your heart, it's like, oh yeah, it's like, there's something, the Holy Spirit, inside of you is like, I'm not hiding my face from you. I'm with you. And you can reaffirm those things. And so but one thing I do love about the Lord that I have learned about him through this is that he is okay with us, like with our pain. And we don't have to get out of grief in order to be close to him. Like, I think that's a big lie that I believed, it's like, and I feel like also as Christians, we just sort of fall into that pattern of just like trying to fix people's problems. And girl, if I could just tell you, I mean, all of the times where I have opened up to someone about like, what I'm going through, and they immediately try to fix the problem. They immediately try to, oh, well, whether it's like trying to give me medical advice, which you should never do. Or it's like, kind of just slapping a little trite, like Christianese phrase onto someone's deepest pain and heartache. It's like, why do we think we need to do that? Like someone who's in grief can actually be closer to the Lord than someone who's like on this high mountaintop. And I think that's something that has shifted in my thinking a lot, is like, the moments when I'm at the lowest and when I'm feeling just like overwhelmed by sorrow and grief, like the Lord is right there with me. He's holding me, he's comforting me. And he's like my father. I really feel like that's the thing that he's just been showing me and correcting all of these like misconceptions that I have about his character. Like it all comes back, at least for me in this season, is like his fatherhood. Like he is a good father and he loves us. He cares for us. He's present with us. He doesn't always give us what we want, but a good father doesn't, like a good father gives us good gifts, but at the appropriate time. And he doesn't like just give us candy, whatever we want. It's like, he knows, he has such a perspective. And so I'm just learning so much about his character and his love towards me, because a lie that I really believed for a long time was that I was really rejected by him. Because you probably can relate to this too. Like I am 31 and I have a friend who's pregnant with her fourth kid. It's like, I just feel like I'm being passed by. And, I've had this like awful picture in my head of a God who just doles out wonderful gifts to everyone but me and says, no, like you don't get to have this. And I think that's what a waiting season can do to us. That's just what the enemy wants to do. He always wants us to accuse God. And so I feel like when you're waiting for something over a really long period of time, like we were talking earlier about singleness and how that's a similar journey too, or chronic illness or infertility, or, there's so many things. Maybe it's a long season of like struggling financially. There could be so many different things. Or maybe you're older and you have, an adult child who's not following God or like going off the deep end. There's just so many things where we just wait and wait and wait, and we're still not seeing our prayers answered. And it's just really tempting to believe that God is not good, and that and you see things happen for other people. That's the thing. It's like in some ways it's encouraging, but it's like, but why isn't that happening for me? And so like, what did I do wrong? But I just always go back to John 9, where, all of the Pharisees are trying to figure out why this guy was born blind. And Jesus says, it's not because of his sin. It's not because of his parents' sin. It's so that the glory of God can be revealed in his life. And so I've been clinging to that as like, the glory of God will be revealed in my life through this. And that's why, he's allowed it to happen. I don't believe, personally, theologically, that God gives us sickness and disease. I don't believe that. I think that that's a result of the fall. That's like from the devil. However, like we know that God controls all things. And so he could stop it. And that's something that we have to reckon with. It's like, he could heal me, and I don't know why it hasn't happened yet, but I do know that he's a good father and that he loves me very much, and that the glory of God will be revealed in my life. So yeah, so that's a lot, but I hope that answers the question.
That is so good. And I love that. And it's so encouraging and filled with hope, but also real. Like, you're not trying to sugarcoat anything. Like, this is where you're at. And, God is starting to use your pain to draw you closer to him, but also to like give you this platform where you have been encouraging and inspiring other women with your story. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about Asha Marie Company, or a lot about it, and how it came to be, kind of the origin story of that, and how God is using that in your life right now.
Yeah, for sure. So I was doing art, and when I met you, actually, I had a different company name, and I was just sort of like, I don't know, I was figuring out like, what am I doing? Like, what I like art, I like painting. It's therapeutic for me, and I'm making stuff for my friends and they're asking to buy it. And so I'm like, well, I guess I'll start a business, but I didn't really have any kind of direction. And at that time I was really going through, I mean, just like the throes of kind of like the early infertility where I'm just like, what is happening? What are we going to do? And like, this is thousands and thousands of dollars. And what do I, it's just so overwhelming. And so I started like sharing just a little bit, like dipping my toes into the water. I would like share a little bit about my story. And every time I would mention it, like people would just be like, oh my gosh, what? Like, tell me more. I want to know more about this. I mean, I think people really connected with it because it's not just, an infertility thing. It's like, I was just actually memorizing part of Romans 8 with my women's Bible study. And there's like, the thing about like the whole creation groans and is waiting for the sons of God to be revealed. It's like everyone's groaning for something. And ultimately we're all groaning for Jesus to come back, for things to be made right, for like all that's lost to be recovered. So, I think it really resonated with people. And so I was encouraged by a business coach actually in our area to start, to kind of go along with that and start sharing more. Like, what if you painted some stuff about your infertility journey and what you're processing? And so it was really therapeutic for me to just kind of start like painting my feelings and painting things that are, even like a lot of scriptures, like about grief and pain, and those who sow in tears shall reap in shouts of joy and things like that. And kind of sharing my story in the midst of that. And it's been amazing. Like I've connected with so many women who are going through the same thing. Like I have all these Instagram friends that I've like never met who are so amazing, who have supported me on my own fertility journey, who I've been able to encourage. And like, there's some that we like use Voxer, like multiple times a week. We just Vox each other encouragements back and forth. And like, I've never met these people in real life. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's been so amazing because, we have to hold each other up. Like we have to encourage each other through these kinds of things. And I feel like, as much as I can like rail against social media sometimes for all of the bad things about it, one great thing about it is that it does connect people who, because before social media, I knew like literally one person in my life who had struggled with infertility. And I can't just talk to her constantly. You know what I mean? It's like, I can't just put that burden on only this one person. So that's what has been really cool is it's connected me with women all over the country and even the world. Like some people, even not even in the United States, who are reaching out and who are connecting with the message. So yeah, it's been really awesome.
And what is the heart behind the name?
Oh yeah. Okay. So, I knew I wanted to have something to do with motherhood. So I wanted to use my middle name, which is Marie, because, it's my middle name. It's my mom's middle name. It was her mom's middle name. It was her mom's middle name. It's like this legacy middle name. And so, and it's all of my aunt's middle names. And so I was like, okay, this like has a theme of motherhood. I'm going to use the name Marie. And I was like, I thought about maybe using my grandma's name. I had a couple ideas, but then I was like, let me check into the meaning, let me check into the meaning of the name. And I knew the meaning of my first name, Amanda, but I didn't know the meaning of Marie. And it comes from Mary, which also comes from the root word mar, which is bitterness. And I was like, oh, dang. And then it can also mean wished for child. So bitterness and wished for child. I was like, okay, Lord, are you speaking to me? Like, what is this? And so I was like, okay, it can't stop there. Like, I can't just call it like Mariko or something like that. Like it can't just be like bitterness and the wished for child. Like, and so I was thinking, okay, what's a biblical name that means something counter to that? And so I've always loved the name Asher, and I know it means laughter. And so it can also mean joy. So I decided, I was like, what if I put them together? So, but I chose to, at first I was thinking Marie Asher, Asher Marie, but I decided to do Asher first because I wanted to show like the prioritization of laughter and joy in front of, like before and over, like triumphing over bitterness while you're waiting for a wish for a child. So it's kind of a long explanation, but it means something to me. And it's really special to me. That all of those elements kind of tied together, and it's part of my name, but it's not my name. So, it's kind of cool.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I think it's just a prophetic name too.
Right.
Like, joy will cover you. And
exactly. And one of the things that like people sometimes will point out to me, and I very much know this about myself, like I just can't get away from bright colors. Like I have to use bright color, like the brightest colors. Like so much of my stuff is like rainbow colored stuff. And like, and that's something that I love. Like I love color. I love bright things. And I love, and even my personality still being like, even through the midst of this, like still being able to see the bright side of things and being an optimist and seeing, the joy that can be found in the midst of suffering and pain. I feel like a lot of my work has a lot of themes of grief, but it's like super bright colors. So I feel like that's another theme too, is everything is brightly colored, but it's all about like grief and suffering. So it's kind of funny. It's like, but that's the thing though, like our life is filled with, trials. Jesus said that we would have difficulty in this world, and our lives are filled with trials. And if we can't also like hold space for joy in the midst of that, like we're not going to make it. Like we got to find space for joy even in they can coexist,
Yeah. What are some ways that you have made space for joy in your life and that you've clung to that and are claiming that maybe over your marriage and your life and your business or any of those areas?
Well, okay. So I feel like anytime I'm tempted to be depressed or, whatever about my situation, I always turn to thankfulness. I just feel like that's gotta be the way, like we have to thank God because we've been given so much more than we deserve. And so I love to really focus on the things that I do have while still hoping for the things that I don't yet have. And so, I love like traveling, and my husband and I always are going on food tours, and like, we just like to, go on little weekend trips and things like that. And just kind of like, sewing into our marriage, finding joy and life and like freedom in that. And really trying to like, because we're aware that once we do have kids, like we might not be able to do some of these things. So we're being like grateful in the ways that we live our life and the things that we do that we couldn't do, once we do finally get that long awaited promise. But thankfulness and just sewing into my marriage and friendships really. Oh my gosh, friendships have carried me through, seriously. Like, like really sewing into other people and allowing them to sow into me and just experiencing the community that comes with like the church and with sisterhood and getting to really like, I don't know, just pour into those deep, deep friendships. Cause again, that's another thing. I'm like, once I become a mom, it's like, it's hard I know my new mom friends who it's like, it's hard to carry on a conversation because
they disappear for a while.
Yeah, exactly. That's okay. It's okay.
Yes.
But right now I think that's another way I practice thankfulness, I guess, is just, really like prioritizing friendship. So,
yeah. And what you said about, just trying to enjoy this season of your marriage now, because when you do have kids, this season's over. And I feel like that in my season of like dating right now. And as much as I want to be married, I hear, it's like, well, you have what I want and someone else has what you want. It's
totally.
Like everybody has something someone else wants, but God has us each on these individual, unique journeys, and just trying to be so thankful for where I'm at and not like wish this away. But it's hard. It's hard you have to do that every day and choose to be thankful and choose to see the ways that God is showing up for you and providing for you right now.
Yeah.
Even though your life looks different than you expected, I never thought I'd be 35 and still not married and living in a friend's guest bedroom at the moment, But, but then it's like, but when I flip that around, I remember that the fact that I have this guest bedroom to live in while my condo is still being renovated is such a gift from the Lord. Like he provided this out of nowhere. And I'm so thankful. So it's like, I could feel bummed about it and it's not where I thought I'd be. But then God gently reminds me, but it's where I have you and I gave it to you and it's good and you're learning. And I just feel like for both of us, as you were talking, I kept thinking all these things God is teaching you right now are going to make you an even more incredible and loving and understanding and wise mother. Like he's shaping you into this mother that you may not have been had you not walked through this. And it's the mother that your child is going to need.
Yeah.
And I think you'll look back on this season and just see every way that God equipped you for what's going to be next.
Yeah.
And I feel that so clearly for you and some of our listeners out there, like the things you're walking through, someone in your future is going to benefit from them in ways that you can't even imagine.
Yeah.
And it's going to all be so worth it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I feel that. I was talking to, sorry, my video just got super blurry. I don't know why. But I was just talking to a friend and kind of like a mentor to me just yesterday, actually. And I was just processing some stuff with her. And I just was like, man, I just got to tell you, she really pours into me. She's like such a mentor. And I just was like, I got to tell you, I'm so thankful for you. Like you have, like she's just guided me along, spurred me on, and she said, I want to encourage you back and say that, because I kept saying, you're so wise. You're so wise. And she was like, I want to encourage you right back and say that this wisdom that you're talking about was forged through some of the hardest things I've ever gone through. So like, I'm able to give to you right now because I went through really hard things too. And she has gone through, really, really hard things. And I'm like, oh man, okay. Yes. Like, so that means that if I just continue with the Lord, if I abide in him through this season, like he's going to, one day he's going to give me wisdom. He's going to forge wisdom in me so that I can, help others who are struggling too. So yeah, you're totally right. Like and the other thing is like, I don't know if you are like this, but I love reading stories about like, giants in the faith. Like I love reading, like one of my favorite books ever is The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom, and just learning about like these people who went through crazy trials. I mean, horrible things, much worse than what I'm going through. And it's like and I look at them in awe and I'm like, wow, look at their, perseverance, and look at like all that they're giving to me, even decades and hundreds of years later, through their writings and things like that. But like, we just don't want to go through the hard parts that kind of like forge that in us. But that's the way, like it says that we will share in his glory, provided we share in his suffering. So there is, obviously that's not God's it's not his will. It's not his way, like he didn't create things. He didn't create us to suffer, but in the redemption of all things, like every bit of suffering that's caused by the fall will be redeemed. And that gives me hope. And I believe that even in my life right now, in the land of the living, like I will see redemption from all of these things in what you're talking about, being able to minister to people, being able to, help encourage someone who's going through something similar. So for sure.
Amen. That is so good. So we are almost out of time. So what did we miss? What is a final thought that you would like to leave our listeners with today?
Okay. So I wanted to share just really quick, like, for people like we were talking about who are going through like a long-term waiting season, or who have been praying and praying and praying and not seeing their prayers answered. I just, I want to encourage people like with this, there's another podcast called The Place We Find Ourselves. Do you know that podcast?
No,
it's a great one.
Look it up. Okay.
Oh yeah, it's really great. And it's by a Christian therapist, and his name is Adam Young. And he has this one episode about hope, and how hope is a battle, and how hope is not this fuzzy, warm thing. It's actually like something that we have to fight for. We have to, but a lot of people give up when their prayers are not answered because, and then they, create a theology around it. They say, oh, maybe God just doesn't want that for me, so I'm going to stop praying for that. Like they just kind of give up, which I get it. It's easier to do that. But one of the things that he said that like really stuck with me is that God is the only one who gets to decide which prayers he says yes to and which ones he says no to. We don't get to decide that. Our responsibility is as children. And I mean, children just ask for things unashamedly, like it doesn't matter. They don't say, oh, well, she probably isn't going to give that to me, so I'm not going to say it. They don't care. They ask you, And so I just feel like there's such a freedom to ask the Lord. And I know it's hard when you don't see your prayers answered, but like just trust in God that he's the one who gets to decide that. So many prayers are answered that seem impossible. And then, others for whatever reason are not, but he's the only one who gets to decide that. And so just to like meditate on the character of God and remember who he is, because that's what's taken me through, this long waiting season of just not, seeing the desires of my heart fulfilled, just like meditating on the character of God and being persistent, not only in your prayers, but also in your fight to believe the truth about who God is, because it's just really easy to fall prey to the schemes of the enemy and believe like that God's not good because he hasn't answered my prayer yet. And it's just not true. Like he's so good. And right now there are treasures in your life, in the hard place that you're in, that like he wants to reveal to you right now. And it's not going to be forever because everything changes in life. Every season, it's like nobody is in one season forever. So it's going to change. So get the most out of where God has you, I guess is just what I would say. And don't give up hope and don't believe the lies that God's not a good father, because he is a good father and he loves you. So that's all I wanted to say.
That is amazing. A perfect way to end. Amanda, thank you so much for being on today.
Yeah, thanks, Jess.
I loved that conversation with Amanda, and I love how we connected a few years back, like I said at the beginning, over our art. And, we were following each other on Instagram and both doing hand lettering and both reconnecting with this creative side that God had put in us. And the thing about creativity is that every single person is creative. You may not feel like you're artistic. Maybe your strength is not painting or singing or drawing or something like stereotypically artsy, but we are each creative. Our very lives are an act of creation. Erwin McManus talks about that in his book, The Artisan's Soul, that everything you're doing is creating the life that you were meant to live or you were designed to live. And, we are that way because we're made by a creative God and we're made in his image. And so in my Bible study this week, we've been diving into the first name of God in the Bible, Elohim. Genesis 1:1 starts out with, in the beginning, God created. God, the word there is Elohim. And it's used in Genesis 23 times to talk about God creating. He is a creative God. He created everything out of nothing, Hebrews 11:3 tells us. That kind of has stuck with me this week as I've been reflecting on that and thinking about God creating everything out of nothing. He can still do that in our lives today. He can take nothing and make something. Like when we feel like we have nothing left to give, we have no resources left at our disposal, that is when God can just blow us away by what he can create. I mean, since the beginning of time, he has been creating beauty out of chaos. He's been creating beauty where nothing existed before. And he has made it good. And I know there are so many things in this world that are broken, so many people hurting, so much pain and suffering. And yet I believe that God is still in the process of making it good, and that we won't see the full redemption until Jesus returns and we have the new heaven and the new earth. But God will not leave things broken. It's not in his character. He is a good creator, and he will restore things to that good state that he originally intended. And I just pray that you see glimpses of that in your life this week. Look for his goodness. Look for his creative nature. Get out in nature and see the things that he has created and try and appreciate the beauty around you. So I'm just going to leave you with that today. I hope you have a wonderful week. I love you very much, and I am praying for you. So we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Collected Podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. And if you like what you've heard, we'd love it if you'd help spread the word. Check back here for new episodes dropping every other Thursday. You can follow along on social media at Collected Ministries. You can also find Jess at Just Biondo. If you would like to support Collected by making a tax-deductible contribution, please visit collectedministries.org/donate. Collected proudly supports and partners with Flourish Kenya, a nonprofit working to support and prevent unplanned adolescent pregnancy in rural Kenya. Learn more at flourishkenya.org. The Collected podcast is produced by Jess Biondo and edited by Jacob Early. Music is by Asaf Elon.